So I know it's been a couple of months since I last posted a bit of a rundown in terms of what's been happening the past few months, what's been going on within the agency, where things have grown to, what lessons I've learned along the way, and really just provide some value to people who are, starting out in their journey in the earlier days of their journey with some actionable lessons that you can apply to actually go through and grow your agency faster, grow in a way that is less stressful, and focus on becoming the person that you need to become to achieve the goals you have within your business at a faster rate as well, because that is really where you're going to see the highest returns on your time, right? It's by focusing on investing in yourself. So let's just get straight into it, right? I've got a Miro board pulled up here. I want to walk you through the past few months, okay? So I made a pretty bad decision in, it was like August. Oh, that's really zoomed out. It was like August/September, right? I made a pretty dumb decision. I decided, I may have already made a video on this, but I hired a sales rep at a time which was far too early for me to be doing it in the business, right? I just wasn't at a point where I needed one. I was doing around probably 25K a month. And there's no way at that level that you should be looking at getting out of sales, because sales is the highest leverage activity that you can have in the business in terms of making sure there's a constant flow of new clients coming on, right? Because there is one thing which is a constant in the agency game, or two things, right? You've got taxes as a constant, and then you've got churn as a constant. Churn will happen no matter what, right? There are going to be things that always come up. Even if you have the most perfect service, you will always have churn that will happen to some degree. Right, so the goal is, if you want to continue to grow, you need to outsell your churn. So that is why sales is one of the most highest leverage activities to have. But the mistake I made was bring on a sales rep, and I put a bunch of cash into ads. The issue was, since I hadn't mastered sales myself, as in I wasn't consistently closing at 40%, right, 30, 40% at a high volume of calls, and had doing that with one sales process, I didn't have the skill set to be able to train the setter up properly. So he lacked the skills and he lacked a process. So I basically brought him into the dark and said, hey, like, here's my fucked up sales process. Make it work and make it make money, right? And what happened was, because we ended up with a system where, let's say this here's the system, right? This draws. This little circle is the system, right? So I was putting a whole bunch of money into it, but because the system was broken, you weren't getting money out of it, right? I was just putting lots of money into it and nothing was coming out because, again, I just hadn't built the system properly. It was completely my own fault. So that happened, and I ended up burning a whole bunch of cash. And then come December, I was in a position where I just looked at my taxes that were due the coming year, and I was like, fuck, like, this is not looking good. So I did a couple of things, right? Firstly, I turned my ads off. I actually stopped running ads outright just to try and save some cash up. And one of the first lessons here is I just went hard on pipeline that month. So I went to a few main avenues, right? I did database reactivations. I'm just going to put down DBR. Did database reactivations to get my existing leads in the pipeline activated and back in the buying pocket. I went to old clients, and within DBR as well, sorry, that's what I say clients. Within DBR, right, you can also go to your hot leads, which are people who you offered, you got on a sales call, they were close to closing. I went through and actually offered them again manually, and then I ran a mass DBR to my sort of like colder list as well. Okay, I went to my old clients and I just did a human check-in on them. I was like, hey, like, how are things going? How's the business going? I sent them over some value, tried to get some old clients signed back on, right? And then I also went to existing clients and tried to get them to buy more stuff. And the easiest way to do that in the agency space is, there's mainly like two ways, right? It can either be something new, as in if you do meta ads, right? You can look at adding in Google ads or TikTok ads, or, strapping on a call center, or, an AI chatbot, or whatever it may be. So you can add on new services, or you can just do more of your existing services, which is what I did for my clients that I upsold, right? So I just went to them and said, hey, things are going really well, right? You're making a ton of money. Let's just go and start putting more ad spend behind it. And then as a consequence of that, since there's more time on our end, we're going to charge you more money, okay? So that was one thing that I did there. And that was one thing that you can do, right? If you're in a position where, or if you ever find yourself in a position where cash is tight, but you've got a pipeline of leads that you can work, whether that be from ads you've run previously or maybe even like cold outreach or whatever it may be, right? Use the resources that you've got. Sometimes you just got to be fucking resourceful. And again, like this all came about because on the back of a big mistake. Great lesson learned from it is that there's always cash in your pipeline that you can pull out. You just have to know where to look for it. Okay, so the main things you can do is a DBR. You can do a database reactivation. Reach out manually to all your hot leads. These again are people who you offered. Oh, that's supposed to say offered, right? People who showed up to a call, whatever it may be. There's lots of people that you can reach out to with that sort of stuff. So now back in a position where ads are running. But one of the main things I want to talk about in this video is a really cool concept that I've been focusing on more, right? And heading into 2026, I got big goals with where I'm wanting to grow the agency to. And a big part of that and a big focus for me at the moment is identity, right? Because again, like the financial goals are great, but the core thing underpinning that is the identity. Because particularly when we're talking of like, a small to medium sized business, if you're not doing, in a position where you've got like a C-suite and like a full like management team in place, you're the one driving the ship essentially, right? You're the one driving the vision. You're the one creating the vision. You're the one getting people to buy into the vision, whatever it may be. So the identity of you as the owner, as the CEO, as the founder, however you want to put it, is so important to actually making sure that you are capable of growing the business to where you need it to be. There's a really cool quote by Charlie Morgan, talks about it a lot, where he says something along the lines of, the version of you that makes $100,000 a month is completely different to you now, right? If you had the skills to make $100,000 a month, you would already be making $100,000 a month, because the main skills you'd need there would be, sales, a good base of sales skills. You'd need recruiting skills to be able to hire the right team, right? And then you'd need some systems on the back end. If you're the person who is capable of building all of this out at the level you'd need to be at $100,000 a month, you would be there already. And the fact that you aren't at your goals shows that you as a person, your identity, your character is not yet capable of achieving those goals. So a big focus for me heading into this year, and again, it's like a basic thing, right? You learn this very early on, but it's something that you often need to be, there's a quote, right? You need to be reminded more than you need to be taught. And it's the same with team. When you have team on, they need to be reminded more than they need to be taught, because you can set the standards. A lot of the time, you just have to remind them of those standards again and again and again and again, and to keep them at the standard that you have for the business. So it's the same thing here, right? It's a constant reminder that the focus should be on the identity behind the goals, becoming the person who is capable of achieving the goals. Like for me, for example, the goal this year is to get to 250K a month with the agency, right? So my focus now is actually not on, there's a few parts to it, right? There's the tactical side of it, obviously, when it's breaking down like, okay, like how many clients do I need to sign a month? Or let's just do number of clients a month, right? What does my churn need to look like? What does my team need to look like? What does my margins need to look like, right? My ad spend, oh, what's going on there? What does my ad spend need to look like, right? There's obviously the tactical side of things to consider, but a big part of actually achieving this goal is thinking through, who do I need to be to achieve this goal, right? And you can sort of break this into two parts. It's actually very helpful to go through and break it down. It's like, who is your current self, right? What are the beliefs that you hold? What is the identity that you hold? What are the beliefs you hold that are holding you back, right? What are the vices you have in your life that are stopping you from doing the actions, taking the actions, having the beliefs, building what you want to build, right? So go through and actually do a list of what is your current self. There's so much you can do in terms of how deep you can go with this. There's probably a few videos out there. Again, I'd probably check out Charlie Morgan would be a good one. He goes into quite a lot of mindset stuff. Or you can try and find some of the old Sam Oven stuff, which again, it's fucking great what he posts. Those would be the two guys I'd recommend would probably be quite good for this. Cam England's probably another good one. Right, he's actually the one who's helped give me a lot of the stuff for this within his actual program, but besides the point, right? You want to look at your current self and then your future self. And this future self is the version of you that has achieved the goals that you have, right? So in my case of at $250,000 a month, that version of me is someone who has mastered sales. They've mastered how to teach sales, how to hire salespeople, how to hire out and delegate themselves or remove themselves from the fulfillment process, bringing in an operations manager, being able to understand how to create offers that attract high-skilled, highly skilled and high value, A players at the operational or executive level. There's so much that needs to happen there, right? And one thing that you can do, which is something I've started doing, because again, this is all about bringing awareness to the identity and trying to understand that gap between the current self and future self, because there is inherently a gap here. Otherwise, you'd already be this person, which means you would have achieved your goals. So it's trying to understand how big is that gap. Pretend that's for current, right? How big is that gap between your current and your future self? And then the more you can bring awareness to this gap, right? Bring awareness to this gap is just instantly going to make you closer to being here, because you understand how this or position A or the current self is actually different to the future self. And once you're aware of that difference, you can actually just simply start acting in alignment with this future self. And by doing that, you're naturally going to start building yourself towards being that future self. And again, as a consequence of that, be closer to achieving your goals. So the focus and the goal is just to become that future self and start acting in alignment and congruence with that future self. So something I'm doing to help with that, and I would highly encourage you to do it as well, is I bought 2 jars. All right, pretend these are jars here. I can actually show you, right? It's a jar like this, and then there's a bunch of marbles in there. So the 2 jars are labeled, right? I've got the jar that is the old self jar, and then the jar that is the new self. And every day when I'm taking actions, I'm thinking through the lens of, okay, are these actions that my old self or my current self would take? Or are these actions that the new self, right, the version that I want to become, wants to take? For me, this is the version that makes $250K a month. Right, so which person am I acting in alignment with at the moment? And whichever one I'm acting in alignment with, I have to put a marble into that jar. So here are all the marbles. Right, let's just pretend these are all lots of different little marbles and stuff like that. I actually have to go and put a marble into whichever jar I'm acting in alignment with, whether that's the old self, the one that I'm trying to kill off, because I no longer want to be this old self. Otherwise, I'm never going to achieve the goals that I have. And I want to start acting in alignment with the new self. So again, I have to put a marble in the jar of which one I'm acting in alignment with. So this is something I found is so helpful for actually just bringing that awareness to, it's bringing awareness to the unconscious. Because sometimes you'll find yourself, like I'll be sitting here, sometimes I'll find I'll like pull up my phone and go to scroll Instagram. And then I stop and I look at my jars because I got them right below my screen here. And it's like, fuck, like what am I doing? This is what the old self does, right? And by doing this, I'm not getting closer to my goals. So my options are either I put my fucking phone away and I do some work. So like, for example, I could go and I could start calling leads. I could, I'm trying to do a lot of recruiting at the moment. Got a lot of new team we need to bring on. I could be building up new systems, new trackers, all of that sort of stuff. So it's either I keep scrolling on my phone and I have to go through the shame of putting the marble in this old self jar, which is just fucking embarrassing. Because if I'm choosing of putting the marble in here and actively admitting to myself that I'm acting out of alignment with my goals, just because I want to scroll some fucking reels, like how stupid is that, right? That's ridiculous. The option's either that, it's like admit that I'd rather scroll reels than achieve my goals, which is just like a ridiculous thing, or I actually just act in alignment with the version of me that has already achieved those goals, right? And then it's a simple question like, cool, what is the highest leverage thing that I can be doing at the moment? And you'd go through and do part of this when you actually map out, what does that new self of you do, right? And you can just go through and think like, what is the highest leverage activities for me to take? And I guarantee you for most of you watching this, right, it's going to be one of like 2 things. It's going to be booking calls, whether that's outbound, creating ads. I imagine most likely be outbound, such as like DMs, emails, cold calls, cold SMS, etc. Booking calls and closing calls. Right, that's it. It's like sending demos, closing demos. This is really the focus until you're at like, even for me, this is what my focus is, like 80% of the time. It's just booking calls, closing calls. Right, trying to get as much cash coming into the business as possible. And then what you do when you have that cash flow coming consistently is you buy yourself the opportunity to get more time. So you can start offloading some of the work off your plate. So you can get things like a media buyer in place. Right, you can get an assistant, like a VA or an EA or whatever you want to call it, right? You can start buying back some of your time and then using your time to make sure you have the systems in place. So building out, your ads infrastructure or, your tracking systems or whatever it may be, right? That's where you can get a little bit more high level. But the first thing your focus needs to be on is just getting your head above the water, getting the cash flow so that you can take the opportunity to breathe and focus on the systems. That's mostly just going to come through sales, to be honest. And obviously there has to be some fulfillment along there, but the focus 99% of the time should be sales. And what I see happen to a lot of people, and I've made this mistake myself sometimes, is, you have a month where you sign like 1 to 3 clients, let's say, which when you're new can feel like a lot. And then you're like, fuck, like now I have to fulfill for these people. So what you do is you turn off all of your acquisition channels, whether that be, Instagram DMs or cold email or whatever it is. You stop doing outreach, or you turn ads or whatever it may be, and you focus fully instead on fulfilling. And then as a consequence of that, right, regardless, like you're still trying to figure out how to fulfill, some of these clients are going to churn anyways. And then because you focus on fulfillment and you take all the focus off of sales, the agency, right, you sign these clients on, let's say this is time and this is money, right? What happens is you sign a bunch of clients and then you're like, oh, fuck, like now I need to fulfill for these people. So then you just plateau, then you get one of them churn. And then you plateau, and then you get one of them churn. And because you've turned off your acquisition system, what happens is because you're spending all your time on fulfillment, you have no new people coming in, and you just slowly churn your way out of all that cash you had, right? Whereas instead, if you kept focusing on sales, you signed all these clients, you're like, fuck, like I'm busy, which by the way, being busy is a great thing. That's how I felt recently. We signed 6 accounts last week, right? Which is like, it's a lot at the moment. It feels like a lot. And I know that, again, when I'm at that like 250K a month mark, this is going to be a slow week, right? But it's trying to understand like things are hectic at the moment, but I'm going through and hiring a setter and doubling my ad spend so I can double down on the number of accounts we get, because that's how you sort of break through these areas where a lot of other people get stuck, they get caught. And then the thought that might go through your head is like, well, yeah, it's stressful, I feel overwhelmed, there's a lot on my plate. And like, yeah, that's the fucking point, right? Because it's at those moments, these moments here, where people start to feel overwhelmed, stressed, and like there's just a lot on their plate. They're the ones who, again, they take their foot off the gas and focus on fulfillment. They're the ones who don't grow. And it's because they can't overcome that stress and keep growing through it, because that's a sign that you're growing when you feel that stress. They're the ones who stay stuck. Right, so a bit of an all over the place video. The main thing to take away from this though is if you're looking to grow your business this year, right? If you're new, if you're experienced, if you've been doing this for years, if you're brand new, whatever it may be, the goal should always be on identity, right? And the only time this really changes is when the business develops an identity of itself. Like if we look at like Amazon, for example, right? There's like such a massive leadership structure in place there that Amazon really has its own identity, right? It's not really just dependent on Jeff Bezos anymore to drive the business. But in your case, watching this, it's different. It's different for you. You're a small business, right? Your identity directly impacts the business. So your focus should be on developing the identity that you need to be, right? Becoming the person who is capable of achieving the goals that you have for the business, whether that be 10K a month, 50K a month, 100K a month, more, right? It's about making sure that you have the identity that aligns with the person who would achieve those goals. And then it's just simply understanding the gap between your current self and your future self, right? If you understand that gap and you're aware of it, then you can make the conscious decision to bridge that gap and just start acting in alignment or acting congruent with that future self. So start acting in the way that future self would, right? There's a really cool thing I've heard where someone talks about like the concept of like have, do, be, right? And people have this idea that it happens of like, oh, well, once I have the money, right, then I'm going to do the things a rich person would do, such as, invest back into myself, invest back in my skill sets, invest in my health, right, which is one of the highest things you can do early on is invest in yourself. And I'm not trying to say anything. I don't want to sell anyone here or anything. I can't be bothered with it. I've got enough on my plate. But it's like once I have the money, then I'm going to act the way a rich person would act, and then I will be rich because I'm doing that. But it doesn't work that way, right? Because when you do it this way, you're putting the identity last, saying you will be rich. That is the identity. So you need to flip it. Right? And the way you do that is it's be, do, have, which is I will become the identity of someone who is able to achieve the goals. Again, whether for you that's 10K a month, 100K a month, whatever it is, right? Let's say it's 100K a month. It's like, right, I will be someone who can make $100,000 a month. And then I will do the actions that someone who makes $100,000 a month will take. Whether that's, increasing ad spend on a consistent basis when you hit a 3x ROAS, all right, whatever it may be. But you will be the person who is capable of doing $100,000 a month. So you will do the activities that they would need to do to achieve it. And as a consequence of that, you will have the business that makes $100,000 a month. Right? Whereas if you flip it the other way, it just sounds silly when you put it this way, right? It's like if you do have, do, be. Imagine thinking this way. It's like, well, first I'm going to have the business that does $100,000 a month, right? And then I'm going to do the things that someone who has that business would do because I'll actually have the business. So then I'll be the person who makes $100,000 a month, right? Like, it makes no sense. Because in your head, I'm sure you've got some idea of some biases that are holding you back. Whether that is, pornography, whether that's food, whether that is not exercising, whether that is, sleeping in, whatever it may be, right? You need to eliminate those vices and start becoming the version of that $100,000 a month version of yourself. Otherwise, you're just not going to achieve the goals that you have. It doesn't work the way where you achieve the goal, and then because you've achieved the goal, you start doing the things the person who would have that would do, and then you become the person. It doesn't work that way. It's the other way around. So again, this is why identity is so important, right? Be the person that is capable of achieving the goals. Do the things that person would do on a daily basis, and then you will have the outcome. That is how you do it. So it is not have, do, be. It is be, do, have. Bit of a ramble. There's not really too much point to this. This is just how I'm trying to think heading into 2026. This is the frame of mind that I'm taking. And again, something I'd highly encourage you to do. Go and buy a couple of jars. Right, like I've got my old stuff, my new stuff one here. I've just got them the other day, so there's not too many marbles in them. But buy the jars, buy the marbles, and give yourself that visual accountability to the actions that you need to take. And what I would say is, like, you can see, this is the old stuff one. Like, there's marbles in there. I'm putting marbles in there if I'm not acting in alignment with the way that the new version of me needs to act. Because, like, you need to hold yourself accountable to the fact that if you don't act in alignment, you put a marble in that jar. You have to do it. Otherwise, the exercise just loses all efficacy. So, that's me. Bye-bye.